alone in the desert, Maricopa Wells to Oatman Flat, February 1851. What was originally around 100 people leaving Independence, Missouri, 6 months prior, cut in half when the group split near Santa Fe in New Mexico territory. More stayed behind in Tucson, with the last few families remaining in Maricopa Wells, about 60 miles east of our second location in this museum. Now it was just the Oatman family. Royce, 42 years old, and his wife, Mary Ann, who was 37 and 9 months pregnant, and their 7 children. Lucy, age 17, Lorenzo Dow, 14, Olive, who turned 13 on the trail that past September, Mary Ann, named for her mother, 7 or 8, Royce Jr. was 4, Charity Ann, 2 or 3, and baby Roland, a year or 2 old. The Oatmans left Maricopa Wells and headed west on February 10, 1851. Over 1,000 miles down, 100 or 2 to go. Almost there, but still low on food and in who knows what kind of physical condition after 6 months on the trail. Before setting off on this leg of their journey, the Oatmans did what we still do today when setting out for off-road or overland travel. Vehicle check. Tighten bolts, inspect wheels and axles, account for all the tools and the other supplies. Health check. Rebandage lingering wounds, mitigate any other ongoing ailments, say goodbye to those staying behind, and, in this case, just like we should do, maximize water storage. Why was water such an issue when the trail ran along the Gila River, which, in 1851, had yet to be dammed, and was a fully running river? It was because the Oatmans were going to take the Mormon Battalion shortcut route, which avoided the bend in the Gila River. Picture a question mark rotated 90 degrees left or counterclockwise. That's the bend in Gila Bend. The Mormon Battalion Trail avoided that big curve by simply continuing a straight line through the area, and in so doing, removing dozens of miles, but at the price of a 40-mile stretch of waterless desert. Several days later, the Oatmans made it across the brutal shortcut and rejoined the Gila River. But the going was slow and arduous, the wagon swinging and swaying under the weight of the cargo. I'm not sure about suspension or if they had traction tools or winches in 1851, but even if they did, imagine having to unload and reload all that gear every time the trail got too rocky, too muddy, or too steep for the animals to pull the wagon. Dust blowing, sun beating down the whole time. Brutal. After almost a week since leaving Maricopa Wells to go at it alone, they saw a familiar face approaching from the east behind them. It was LeConte and his guide. They had already been to Tucson, returned to the Maricopa and Pima villages, and were now heading back to California. LeConte could see Royce and his family were struggling, really struggling. Royce asked LeConte to take a letter to Brevet Major Heinzelman at Camp Yuma asking for assistance, to send help and horses. LeConte agreed to deliver said message and continue down the trail, west. The next day, about 30 miles further down the trail, LeConte and his guide were followed by a small group of Indians for some time before they dispersed and rode away. Thinking nothing of it, LeConte and his guide set up camp and went to sleep. The next morning, their horses were gone. Another version of the story has the scientist and his guide being distracted by chit-chat with the Indians, but I'm not sure how that'd be possible here in Arizona with miles-wide views in most directions. Either way, LeConte and his guide were now on foot, and therefore immediately delayed, and with them, Royce's request for help. So, now what's LeConte going to do? He just left a family of 9 on the trail in dire need of food and help. Maybe he could leave a note. That sounds sarcastic, but LeConte was, indeed, supposed to have left a note for Royce on the trail. On a tree on the trail where Royce would see it. I appreciate the thought here, but it seems like a stretch. We're here recording in situ, and there really aren't any proper trees. Certainly not ones that would hold a paper note without blowing away. How would he have even attached it? Maybe LeConte did leave a note. Maybe it was creative storytelling by Stratton, who we'll meet later, ghostwriting accounts of the events years after they occurred. My personal doubts aside, LeConte and his guide were themselves now in a sticky situation, being on foot, but not nearly in as much danger as the Oatmans, as we'll soon see. In the next section, the Oatman Massacre, February 18th, 1851. But before moving on, put yourselves in the Oatman's shoes. Try to imagine 6 months along the Santa Fe and now various Gila trails. On foot and by wagon, carrying everything you own, blistered and sunburnt, eating dust the whole time. Imagine the stress and discomfort, the frustration and impatience. Think about what kept them going. Their faith, their fortitude, survival instincts at this point. Talk it over with your group, and when you're ready, go ahead and play the next section. The Oatman Massacre, February 18th, 1851.